Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds, and welcome to the 7th and final live stream ever, at least on this channel, of the disabled tyrant and his beloved pet fish. So, mixed emotions for this one. Like, I'm super excited, but also, like, I'm super fond of this series, so, like, I'm a little bit sad. Hello, Momars Rover. Like, I'm gonna miss it. Not saying we won't have more. Like, the next series is Thousand Autumns, but, like, there's something special about this series, with just how wonderful it is. But anyway, I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Right? It's so bittersweet. I agree, Momar's Rover. And hello, Chi-Chi Kiki. How are both of you doing today? Oh, hi, Annika. How are you three doing today? Good, I hope. I am super excited. It was a really long day. Work was a little bit rough, but I'm here now. I'm excited. I have a con this weekend I'm super excited about. I made soup. Well, actually, I got the products and my mom made soup while I was at work. I was going to make soup. I'm glad you're good, Chi-Chi Kiki. But I am super excited about the con tomorrow. So I'm just going to focus on that. We'll worry about work on Tuesday. Right? I'm good. We had an in-office trick-or-treating, so you wore your Shenxing Chu cosplay. That's so cool, Annika. I wish we kind of do that. We'll be dressing up, but I'll be doing low-key cosplay that day, because, well, they decided to do a theme, and it was Little Mermaid, and I got Ariel. So I can't really do seashells, and I've spent a lot of money on my other cosplays, so we're doing modern Ariel, but also had a long day, but almost the weekend, so that's exciting. I agree, Momar's Rover. Right? I can't wait to tell you all about it. And I definitely will have a fun time. Hello, Truffle. How are you doing tonight? Right? I mean, I kind of want the humor route, so I got a shirt that has like a mermaid on it and it says mermaid vibes, and I've got the wig, and I'll wear, like, I've got these kind of ripped jeans, and I'll put on flip-flops, and it'll be fun. Might wear like a shell necklace just because. Maybe a fish clippy. Ooh, Mid-Autumn Festival this weekend. That'll be nice, Chi-Chi Kiki. Oh, the sweatshirt. I actually picked this up at a con. The artist makes her own stuff. I have them on Shopify. Let me pull it up real quick. I actually have another one of their sweaters. That one's colored, but I really like this one. It's got this monster design. This is like their logo. But it's actually knit fabric, which makes it even cooler. But yeah. Let me look it up real quick. If you couldn't tell, this is a very chill stream. I will be talking to the audience. I will be talking to myself. I will be talking to the book. I like to talk, as you can tell. Let me see. They're in my favorites, because they're really good. They are expensive, but worth it. I see them every year at one of the cons I go to, which is better because then you can try on stuff. But their stuff runs pretty true to size. Where are you? Probably have something in my favorites list from them. So I will look at that real quick. Yep, I do. So it's called Quinoa Monster. Or Quinoa Monster. There's my sweatshirt. And you will soon find out exactly how much I paid for it, which is kind of painful. But worth it, because I've used it for years. But I really like their style. Like, even their socks are cool. Like, look at that. Those are some cool socks. Yep, no worries. I can actually show you what my other sweater looks like. Ooh, they made the kitty one. Nice. This one. I have this one as well. So you will probably see that one on at some point. Right? And I really like supporting, like, they're not local, but they're kind of local. So I like supporting small businesses. That's the term. But yeah. Always happy if I have the name. Right? Space theme stuff is cool. So yeah. I always at least pop into their booth, even if I don't pick up anything new. But I think that's about it. Our counts. Our yeet count for book 4 is a measly 3. Our sob count, on the other hand, is a whopping 17 for this novel. And I think we shall just go ahead and get started. I'm gonna give it a solid starting at 7 by the time I actually get the book open. Right? The sobs are really winning by a landslide. And let's get on with it. Right? The colors are what make it pop. Like, the design itself is like what really draws you in, but then the colors really mwah. He stopped yeeting for the baby. He really did, Chi-Chi Kiki. The babies also are helping with the sob count. But anyway, chapter 150, Helping People Fishy Style. Oh, so I did leave you on a little bit of a cliffhanger last time, but we'll refresh that a little bit. So, that's right, Liu answered. He could only help a few people by himself, but if he could speak to the emperor and enact change from the top down, it would help more than just a few people. So, if you remember from Tuesday, Liu had Wang Gong send out palace servants with a survey offering 1 copper for them to do a survey. And in that survey, they asked, basically, first question, how do you feel about a widowed woman remarrying? Or a divorced widow woman, I think was it, marrying again. And most people were like, no, they should keep their virtue or honor. And then the second question was, now, thinking how you answered in the first question, how would you feel if it was your family? Your sister, your sister-in-law, your daughter? And like 70% of the people, I think it was, changed their answer to be like, you know what, maybe it's not that bad to have them remarry. Like, I might be okay. And so he's kind of starting to change the people's perspective and feelings on this, initially to help Lingya. Was it Lingya? No, that doesn't feel right. I think Lingya was the person who's Lady Liang. I think it is Lady Liang. Hang on, I want it. Liang! Yes, it is Lady Liang. But she declined. So, if he changes the perspective of the nation, then there's nothing in her way, even without him directly helping her. that will stop her from remarrying or at least living a better life as a widower. So, I will reread now. He could only help a few people by himself, but if he could speak to the emperor and enact change from the top down, it would help more than just a few people. Yeah, Liu's out here inventing lobbying and market surveys. Tianxi, will you help me? Liu asked. The crown prince's response was firm. Yes. Because I am you? Liu asked, half jokingly, half emotional. So the fish had heard. The crown prince smiled. Because I will give you everything you ask for. Tianxi. He suddenly remembered the main quest that had gone quiet after Princess Langya's revolt. What did it mean to share the country? The crown prince said that he would give him everything he wanted. Did that mean he should push forward bravely? Apart from helping these women, there's something else I want. The crown prince had given him too much love. Liu pressed on bravely. Tianxi, this is my last tribulation. If one day you ascend to that spot and I wanted your country, what would you do? So that's where we ended yesterday. Now let's begin. Sorry. I think I'm starting to get a little bit of a cold. So if I'm a little more nasally or like snorting, I'm sorry. Helping people fishy style. Mu Tianxi was shocked for a moment, not because Liu had the audacity to ask for the country, but because of what he said about his last tribulation. What did he mean by last? Although Xiao Yu hadn't said why he was by his side, Liao Kong had mentioned that Xiao Yu needed to overcome tribulations. He himself could feel that this was true. Last time, because of the bandits, Xiao Yu had said he hadn't completely overcome the tribulations. Yeah, change of seasons always gets me too. Thankfully, I've already had like my flu shot and COVID shot. So like at least the kids aren't getting me as much because we've already had so much coughing. But like I can't help it if I get me sick. So there's only so much you can do when you work with children. So yeah. Naturally, Mu Tianxi wondered, if this was the last tribulation, did that mean Xiao Yu would leave him afterward? He was now the crown prince and had both sons and a daughter. From the outside, his life looked perfect. But he was afraid that this perfect life would make the carp spirit think he'd spent enough time by his side and that it was time to leave. He cared for Xiao Yu more and more each day. He couldn't accept Xiao Yu leaving him unless he died. Every time he brought it up, Xiao Yu would stumble over his words, never giving him a straight answer. So by now, he would do anything to keep Xiao Yu at his side. Poor Prince Jing thinks his fish wife's gonna leave him with their 5 kids. Yeah, he really does, Momar's Rover. Well, he's afraid that, like, once he's done, he's done. He knew Xiao Yu was a kind man who wanted to take care of even Piakshu and Lady Liang. There's no way Mu Tianxi would believe Xiao Yu had stayed by his side for this long just because he wanted to rule the country. Xiao Yu was different from everyone else. If he really wanted something, why hadn't he asked when he was at his lowest? That way, no matter what reason he was given, the crown prince would say yes. But Xiao Yu had chosen to mention it when there was nothing standing in his way. If he were sly and talked his way out of it, or straight up rejected him, what could Xiao Yu do? Xiao Yu was so smart. How could he not know? Xiao Yu truly didn't need to even ask. After he ascended the throne, he planned to give Xiao Yu the same amount of power as a prince regent. He knew Xiao Yu had things he wanted to do and the ability to do them, but he was restricted by the title of Crown Prince Consort and afraid that it would weaken their relationship besides. But how could that ever happen? While the imperial physicians were curing his poison, he had been unconscious for a long time and had spent a lot of that time dreaming of the past. Prince Jing is giving Liu a lot of credit here. He's always giving Liu credit, let's be real, Truffle. The cure for his muteness, his crown prince position, even his life, were all thanks to Xiaoyu's help. If Prince Regent wasn't enough and Xiaoyu wanted more, then if he were able, he wouldn't shy away from giving it to him. From Xiaoyu's tone of voice, though, it didn't actually sound like he genuinely wanted the country. It seemed more like he was testing him. Wu Tianxi saw right through him. This test might have something to do with that last tribulation, he thought. If he answered to Xiaoyu's satisfaction, would Xiaoyu just leave? It wasn't impossible. Since Shu Bao's birth, the insecurities within Wu Tianxi's heart had started to grow. He couldn't make a single mistake. He'd rather not answer at all than risk answering incorrectly. He clenched his jaw. I'll think about it and get back to you. Liu, who had been waiting for the standard answer, was taken aback. Huh? Didn't the Crown Prince just say he would give me anything I wanted? Liu couldn't help but puff out his cheeks indignantly. If men were reliable, pigs could fly. On one hand, he couldn't believe the Crown Prince was just saying empty things to make him happy. On the other hand, he knew his request had been a little ridiculous. A country was hardly a trivial matter. Some people could give up their parents and children to rule a country. Some might even throw away their own life. A country was important, and it was the Crown Prince's family legacy. Who was he to demand the Crown Prince share his family legacy with him? Liu scolded himself for his stupidity. Prince Jing's love had made him lose brain cells. He'd gotten carried away, forgetting everyone had their own limits. It was an extremely stupid question. He'd put both himself and the Crown Prince in an awkward position. Sorry, I shouldn't have asked that, he said. Just pretend I never brought it up. He couldn't resent the Crown Prince for this. He was the one who had gone too far, after all. There was no way the final quest would be so easy. This was just a small stumble. He'd forget about it. Besides, the Crown Prince hadn't even rejected him outright. He'd said he would think about it. If it was anyone else, the prince definitely would have gotten mad. These two are both so in love that they are making things more complicated than they are. Too cute. I mean, yeah, this is one of the few points where they don't actually communicate with each other clearly. Which I think is kind of amusing, where this is one of those rare danmes where they actually will talk their shit out instead of just letting it fester into a heart wound, if we're talking cultivation. But, like, this is one of those moments where Prince Jing isn't actually saying what's bothering him. Which, I mean, to be fair, like, that's fine. Human. Oh, definitely still couple goals. Like, absolutely. Like, I'll take it happily. But, they say it right here. They had only been together about 2 years. Perhaps in another 2 years, or perhaps when they were old, the Crown Prince would have thought about it enough to give him an answer. Either way, the boss had been defeated, and now that he was Crown Prince consort, there was no one who could bully him. Even if an outstanding carp spirit like him still had to transform once a day, wasn't a big problem, right? Liu comforted himself with logic and reason. He refused to let this setback get to him. He didn't get the answer he wanted, but his relationship with the Crown Prince was still the same. As a result, Wu Tianxi was even more convinced that delaying and not saying exactly what he was feeling had been the right decision. Oops. Otherwise, the fish might just get up and leave him and his children behind. To be fair, Prince Jing might think Yao operate by fairy rules. In human-fairy relationships, questioning the relationship usually results in the fairy leaving. That is true. especially if you're talking Fei. Ugh. I could see this being a really amazing Selkie story with Prince Jing and Liu. They would make an amazing Selkie pair, where Liu's the Selkie that like washes up on shore and Prince Jing finds his pelt. Oh, if any of you want to write it, feel free. Anyway, he could tell his deflection had made Xiao Yu a little dejected. But that was okay. He'd make it up to him in other ways. With the last quest still out of reach, Liu threw himself into the Women's Federation. Of course, this was ancient China, so no one would understand what a women's federation was just yet. Liu made a few adjustments and named it the Ladies' Assistance Society. The first step was to get the Emperor's support, and then they could create an office somewhere in the capital. If things went well, they could expand to other areas. Yes, I agree. That would be an amazing AU, Annika. I mean, it's always an option for later. If things went well, they could expand to other areas. After conducting the survey, Liu believed in his cause even more. Crown Prince thought up an idea for him. Women remaining widows was a deep-rooted principle. If he wanted to change it, it wasn't enough to just have the people on his side. He needed the court officials on his side too. That way, he would be more persuasive. Liu thought that made sense, but how would he get the officials to fill out his survey? The Crown Prince seemed to smile at his consort, then glanced at his own lap. Liu's face immediately went red. You have both sons and daughters now. Still? The Crown Prince consort complained, but he still sat down. The Crown Prince held his consort satisfied. Shu Bao's 1-month celebration banquet had just passed, so they couldn't hold another one so soon. That was what Liu was struggling with too. It wasn't easy to find an excuse. Liu was just wondering what the Crown Prince was going to say when the Crown Prince casually summoned all the officials from the 6 ministries to the manor. Liu and his politician era, right, Momar's Rover? Hang on, I lost my place. 1 second. Okay, fine. His husband had special rights. With the Crown Prince there to watch over everything, the officials put in a lot of effort on the survey. Liu was able to finish his task without much effort. At first, he thought most of these officials wouldn't approve of widows remarrying, but in fact, the opposite turned out to be true. Liu thought about it carefully. Perhaps it was because officials had seen and experienced more, so they knew almost nothing good came to a widowed woman. It was just that the court promoted it. Liu sorted all the survey results and put together a statement. He hoped the Crown Prince could talk to the Emperor about it, but the prince said he should do it, since it was his idea. Liu started to panic. Didn't the Crown Prince say he would help him? Was he helping him jump into a fire? Besides, he was the Crown Prince consort. If he went to court, wouldn't he get cursed at? But Liu really did want to start this women's federation. He wasn't just talking about it for fun. Part of me also thinks the politicians probably filled it out favorably, because they're like, oh, this is a way to getting good with the Crown Prince, is by going along with what his consort is talking about. And then maybe also because they actually might have some sort of skin in the game, like relative-wise. I mean, yes, he would have to go to court at some point as the Empress, but I think that'd probably be after Prince Jing actually became emperor, which, depending, might be after the emperor dies. I think usually in this time period it was after the emperor died. Though this emperor seems more than willing to actually just pass down the reign and step back. I know that wasn't usually the norm. But you have a point, Truffle. The crown prince went to court, and Liu followed closely behind. Sob, sob, he felt like the imperial censors and a few of the older officials might bore holes in him with the force of their stares. All right, we got sub number 18. When the emperor saw Liu, confusion was written all over his face. He turned to Prince Jing. Mu Tianxi smiled. Royal father, the crown prince consort has a report for you to see. As a member of the royal family, I believe he has the right to bring matters to your attention. Whose daughter-in-law randomly brought in reports? The emperor was still a little confused, but he valued competence. Thinking of Liu's ideas on dealing with locusts on the western border, the emperor decided to allow the report. Liu handed it over to the emperor himself. When he finished reading, the emperor chuckled. This is a custom left over from the past. I didn't realize we'd been keeping it up until now. Thank you for collecting all this information. I will consider it. There are merits to the idea of a ladies' aid society, so I will leave that to you. Formulate a specific plan and hand it in to me. That was it. Liu was internally delighted. He was too lucky. He thought he'd have to write a beautiful essay to convince the emperor, but he agreed just like that. He hurried to thank the emperor. The officials all around him chorused, "Long live the emperor!" which meant they agreed with the decision. A thought occurred to Liu, and he suddenly understood. Why didn't the officials oppose him? Because women having to remain a widow wasn't a rule the emperor had come up with. If he had a chance to abolish an old custom and improve his reputation, there was no reason for the emperor not to take it. Oh, that's smart. Besides, even if he didn't want to at first, once he saw the stance of all the officials, the emperor had to consider it carefully anyway. Was that why the crown prince wanted him to collect the opinions of the officials? Liu turned around suddenly to look at the crown prince. Was the crown prince teaching him? The prince smiled back at him gently. Liu felt like there was something squeezing at his heart. You could tell the crown prince didn't try to put any boundaries up between them at all. He was even guiding him. He still loved him. So why did they have to, cough, cough, think about sharing the country? Liu wasn't sure. Later, the emperor declared that after one half of a couple had passed away, the other party was free to do as they pleased. Remaining a widow was a virtuous choice, but there was nothing wrong with doing the opposite. Since the emperor had made his stance clear, Liu could continue with his plans. Because there were so many things to take care of, setting up the Lady Assistance Society was all Liu had time for. He had to find a location and people. Then once it was up and running, he had to worry about people coming to start trouble. Yeah, Prince Jing training Liu in politics. Finally, the society welcomed its first woman in need. After her husband passed away, she'd suffered torment at the hands of her husband's family. She couldn't take it anymore and wanted to leave, but the elders of her husband's family wouldn't let her go. Despairing, the woman had tried to take her own life many times, but each time she was saved. She had heard about this society, and it was her last hope. Liu hurriedly gathered Madame Qin, Xiao Luo, and a few others to talk to this woman. As the crown prince consort, and with the emperor's guidance, using all the methods available to him, he was finally able to convince the woman's in-laws to let her go peacefully. Liu had already mentally prepared himself, but he was increasingly starting to realize the importance of patience and attention to detail. Before long, the society's work was starting to gain momentum, and there were more and more requests for help. The emperor ordered trained female officials to take over, and Liu took a step back, only occasionally offering ideas. The Ladies' Assistance Society was gaining a reputation. After a while, even Lady Liang gathered the courage to come with a servant. If there was a new path to walk, why stay in the mud? The Crown Prince said Lady Liang's situation was more complicated than an ordinary woman's. Liu was afraid he wouldn't be able to convince the emperor, so he conscripted the Crown Prince to help. Fortunately, the emperor had written the announcement himself, saying one could not purposefully make things difficult for a widow, so he could hardly do so himself. Although Lady Liang was in danger of defying the emperor's orders because he was the one who decided on the marriage, the emperor's decision had been what brought Lady Liang all this pain. The emperor hated Mu Tianxiao so much that he hadn't spared a single thought for Lady Liang. Since Lady Liang and Mu Tianxiao had no connection anymore, the crown prince suggested the emperor should allow Lady Liang to divorce the late Mu Tianxiao. Liu was speechless. The crown prince really would stop at nothing when it came to the sixth prince. But wasn't this the most effective method? The crown prince's suggestion was exactly what the emperor wanted to, so he allowed it. Lady Liang regained her freedom. She kept bowing to the emperor, the crown prince, and Liu. "There's no need to thank me," said the crown prince. "If it weren't for Xiao Yu, we might not have been able to get here." Lady Liang understood. She kowtowed a few extra times at Liu. Liu glanced at the prince, and the prince looked back at him. The crown prince really didn't have any reservations when it came to him, he thought. He would even give all the credit to him. "Tianxi, can we discuss the thing we talked about last time?" Liu asked. Mu Tianxi could already guess what he was about to say, and his expression changed suddenly. "Goodbye!" Was the crown prince hiding something from him? This is chapter 151, Fishy Tribulation. I love that the crown prince literally was like, "Peace, I'm out." Like, "Oh, nope, I don't have time. I gotta go." Fishy Tribulation. Was the crown prince hiding something from him? Liu's intuition told him yes. He didn't know what to do. They already had 5 children together. If the crown prince trusted him, why couldn't he tell him the truth? But thinking about how his own lies had spread like weeds at the beginning of their relationship, Liu couldn't muster the courage to ask. In this day and age, were husbands not allowed to have little secrets to themselves? Got it. A light bulb appeared above Liu's head. How could he have forgotten? He still had an opportunity to watch a secret in the system. It had been some time, but Liu immediately entered the system. He collected a bunch of secrets that he hadn't viewed yet as rewards for completing quests in the past. He had to get around to them sooner or later. "The secrets from before. I want to watch them," said Liu. The system responded immediately, listing out all of the Crown Prince's secrets. There still weren't any explanations, just sequences of changing scenery. Liu was stumped. He just had to guess. Besides, he himself couldn't explain what kind of secret the Crown Prince had been hiding recently. Liu tried asking, "Are any of the secrets more recent?" "The secrets are random and cannot be specified," the system replied. "Fine. I always knew you were a fish scamming system." Liu had no choice but to watch all of them. Most of the secrets were about the secret ways the Crown Prince dealt with people. Usually, Liu would figure it out depending on who appeared in the scene. Very quickly, Liu learned a lot of things he didn't know before. Using the system to look for secrets seems a little sneaky. Yeah, little cheatsy doodly. But, he's determined. Like Mu Tianxiao being reported by the Secretary of the Ministry of Works, Shang Jing, thus losing the Emperor's trust. It had been the crown prince who'd sent word to Zhang Jing. Like all of the crown prince's letters to the emperor, luring the emperor step by step into accepting Liu as his consort. That was pretty funny. Like how, before they left for the western border, the crown prince had specifically gone to Yiqian to ask him for the green plum wine he'd made for them. Liu was getting dizzy from all that he saw, but this was the true crown prince. Whenever he finished watching one secret, a new one would pop up. Liu suddenly saw a fish swim by in one of the scenes. Was this it here? He immediately opened up that secret. This secret took place in the water. There was a black fish with gold specks doing its best to bite on a piece of a child's clothing, fighting against the water to swim up. That exchange still makes me laugh, right? Wasn't this him before he turned into a koi? At the time, he was still mostly black, and he hadn't completed the task to change yet. Liu wouldn't be wrong about himself, but he'd never grabbed onto a child in the water. Yes, you did. This child looked even bigger than Dabao. That's because it isn't. When the child turned his red cheeks towards him and saw that a fish was saving him, his eyes were filled with surprise. Liu was even more surprised than the child was. This child, though it wasn't Dabao, had a face that was very similar. Liu finally recognized him. This was little Chubbs, Dabao's dad when he was younger. I love that he just refers to him as little Chubbs instead of like young Tianxi. Like he's like, no, it's little Chubbs. Liu choked. He'd almost forgotten that this was one of the crown prince's secrets. That meant the child in the secret must be the crown prince. But this didn't make any sense. When he'd met little Chubbs as a fish before, it had been an illusion. How had he shown up in the prince's secret? Illusions were fake and didn't exist, but the secrets were real. Why had they gotten mixed up? Liu didn't understand, so he continued watching. This should be little Chubb's point of view. Liu saw the black fish curl up so little Chubbs could pet it. At first, he'd suspected that this black and gold fish might not even be him, but it was so enthusiastic. Who else could it be? The black fish dragged the boy to shore, and the boy grabbed onto the fish excitedly. Under the fish's guidance, he started rubbing the fish's head clumsily. Little Chubbs and the fish played for a while. When he heard other people approaching, the fish dove into the water. Liu saw the pond sparkle with golden light. Clearly, that was where the fish was hiding. Little Chubbs wanted to search for the fish, but that was when the emperor and a group of imperial physicians all rushed over, asking the small boy how he was feeling. Little Chubbs passed out, and the physicians realized that he was suffering from a fever. The emperor demanded the physicians cure little Chubbs, no matter what. In the end, a monk showed up. Liu recognized him. It was a young Liao Kong. Liao Kong helped the imperial physicians cure little Chubb's fever, and after listening to Liao Kong's suggestion, the emperor changed the child's name. The emperor chuckled. I saw the pond glistening full of golden light, so let's call him Tianxi. Since Liu was a fish, when he'd hidden himself, he hadn't realized the lighting in the pond had changed. Now that he'd seen it from someone else's point of view, he knew that the golden light the emperor had seen was from the golden scales on his stomach. Had the crown prince been named Tianxi because of him? Yep. Little Chubbs, Mu Tianxi, returned to the pond after he recovered, gazing at the water. He'd already forgotten what had happened after he fell into the pond. He couldn't recall anything. After the secret ended, it was a while before Liu could calm down. What did this mean? Why had the illusion turned into reality? Did he really exist in the Crown Prince's youth? The system didn't answer. The memories continued to switch scenes, flashing constantly. Liu continued on to the next secret. He noticed that in one of the secrets, Mu Tianxi was already dressed like he was now, as the crown prince, so he chose that one. In the secret, Mu Tianxi was sitting at his desk, concentrating on something he was writing. Li Yu waited for a long time, but he didn't see anyone else around. The crown prince continued to write. Li Yu thought about going to read what the crown prince was writing. Usually, when the crown prince was taking care of private matters, he would leave him alone. But thinking about the way the crown prince trusted him and all the ways he helped him, Liu gathered the courage to take a look. He thought the secret must be whatever the crown prince was writing. Perhaps it was a political matter, maybe even top secret. The secrets all contained events that had already happened. They were memories. The crown prince inside this memory shouldn't be able to see him. Just one look. Liu took a quick glance down and saw his own name. He paused and looked down again, reading the line, "Have Liu as my empress, with the same authority as a prince regent." He realized at once that this was the crown prince making preparations for his ascent to the throne. If the crown prince became emperor, then Liu would naturally become the fish empress. He had thought about this countless times and had come to accept it. There was nothing particularly special about choosing him to be the empress, but the second half was the important part, with the same authority as a prince regent. The empress's job was to maintain order in the emperor's harem, and at most to admonish the emperor slightly if he ever did anything too crazy. But a prince regent was different. A prince regent held real authority and could participate in politics. Liu's teeth started to ache. What was his husband planning so sneakily? An empress who held the same authority as a prince regent? What was that? The empress regent? Wait, wasn't this sharing the country? Liu's brain spun. System, can I complete the main quest now? Sorry, user. The Tyrant has not stated this outright, so it doesn't count. He'd already written it down, so how does it not count? Liu was about to argue when he saw the crown prince put down his brush and carefully read over what he'd just written with a smile. Then he sighed, brought the paper to a candle, and lit it, watching as the flames swallowed up all the words. The crown prince had burned the paper. No wonder it didn't count. But he didn't blame the crown prince. He was only one step away from becoming the emperor. Writing something like that was a sign of great disrespect, so of course he had to get rid of it. So, why had he written it in the first place? And if the crown prince wanted him to participate in running the country, why wouldn't he let him know? He's afraid he's going to lose you. Why did he do his best to avoid the subject whenever the country was brought up? Now that he'd discovered the crown prince's intention. Sorry, there was like glass sounding. I think my parents dropped a cup or something. Why did he do his best to avoid the subject whenever the country was brought up? Now that he'd discovered the crown prince's intentions, Liu had a lot of new questions. After he exited the system, Liu went to look for the crown prince to get answers. But the crown prince wasn't home. He had gone to the Ministry of Revenue. It occurred to Liu that he'd been neglecting Princess Xue Bao recently while he'd been busy with the Ladies' Assistance Society, so he decided to go check on the kids. When Liu entered Xue Bao's rooms, he saw that Xiao Luo had fallen asleep in front of the cradle. Xiao Luo was still young. Apart from taking care of Xue Bao, she would sometimes be called on by Liu to help at the Ladies' Assistance Society, so she was very busy every day. Liu was an understanding master. He let Xiao Luo sleep. From this side of the cradle, he could see Xue Bao's head was turned and facing the other side. When Liu walked over, he found Da Bao and the others there as well. The 4 babies were lying in a heap on the ground. They were asleep too. Airbao's fingers still on his chubby little face, maintaining the funny face he was making to entertain his sister. Da Bao and San Bao were pinching Airbao's face while Si Bao slept a little further away, curled up in a ball. It was unclear if he'd rolled over and then fallen asleep, or if he'd rolled over there while he was asleep already. Smiling, Liu tucked the blanket tighter around his daughter. Shu Bao's little cheeks were flushed pink. Her eyes moved beneath their lids, and Liu hurried to pat her gently on the back. Before Shu Bao could wake up, she had fallen back into dreamland. Liu turned and took 2 blankets from the bed. He draped one over Xiao Luo's shoulders and put one over the 4 babies. When he laid the blanket down, he thought he was being very gentle, but it still woke Da Bao. He got up, rubbing his eyes sleepily, and called out, "Dad?" Liu hurried to shush him, thinking he could get Da Bao to fall back to sleep, just like Shu Bao. However, Da Bao only became more awake. The responsible fish Gaga worked with his fish dad to cover the other babies in blankets. He even followed Liu's example, tucking the blanket around his sister and patting her to take care of her. Da Bao really was a responsible older brother. Liu couldn't help but smile. Soon, Xiao Luo woke up. When she realized that she'd fallen asleep and the consort was taking care of the babies for her, she became very apologetic. Liu didn't blame her, though. He flapped his hands at her casually and told her to go rest. Incredibly grateful, Xiao Luo bowed to Liu before leaving. Thinking that the young masters might be hungry after they woke up, she went to prepare something for them to eat. It was a nice day out today and very warm. The curtains had been left open a crack so that the room didn't grow too stuffy, but Liu decided to open the window to let in some air. The sky was very blue. Liu glanced at it casually and saw a few dark clouds floating over from the distance. Mu Tianxi now worked in the Ministry of Revenue as well. Eager to prove himself, the minister was in the middle of reporting the major task of the Ministry of Revenue to the Crown Prince when a cold breeze blew through the air. The Crown Prince glanced out the window. It had been bright and sunny a moment ago, but now the sky was covered in dark clouds, a full thunderstorm. "Your Highness, please be careful," said the Minister of Revenue, concerned. Mu Tianxi didn't hear him. He paused, one hand holding a report, and kept staring out the window. In the blink of an eye, a flash of lightning lit up the sky, immediately followed by thunder. That thunder was much louder than normal. When he looked in the direction the lightning had struck, thunder can't strike, it seemed to be the Crown Prince's manor. Xiao Yu was there. Mu Tianxi suddenly turned white. He thought back to all the ancient books he'd pored through before. Lightning of that immense size, accompanied by wind and rain. This was the sign of a tribulation. The Crown Prince immediately threw down his brush and rushed to the door. The Minister of Revenue and the few other officials were all shocked and rushed forward to stop him, but he ignored them all. The minister couldn't stop the Crown Prince, so he ordered someone to retrieve a raincoat and bamboo hat. But by the time the items were fetched, the Crown Prince had already disappeared. Mu Tianxi raced through the heavy rain on horseback, returning to the manor at breakneck speed. Hang on. Sorry, I lost my place. He didn't even take the time to dismount, rushing into the manor, still on horseback. Wang Gongong was startled by his sudden appearance. When he nervously asked him what was going on, the Crown Prince didn't respond. He ran to the bedroom. He could hear the cries of children from outside. With his heart pounding even faster, he rushed into the room, only to see Da Bao sitting on the floor rubbing his eyes. Liu stood by the window, his robes whipping about him. At that moment, he thought Liu was about to disappear into the air. For all that he'd avoided Xiao Yu's question, was the final tribulation here at last? A tribulation by lightning was dangerous, and even if he was successful, he would have to say goodbye. Xiao Yu, don't leave! Mu Tianxi screamed. He rushed forward, putting himself between the fish and the rain, and held Liu firmly in his arms. Da Bao was crying because the wind had gotten into his eyes. Meanwhile, Liu, who had just wanted to close the window because it had gotten really windy, was more confused than he had ever been before. Da Bao forgot about his eyes and stared at his two fathers, blinking. We do actually have a picture. I love how confused Liu is. He's like, hello, husband of mine. Oh, hang on, it's getting blurry. Hang on. There it is. The drama! There you go. Tianxi, what's going on? Liu asked, confused. The crown prince was soaked through with rain. His brocade robes couldn't be wetter. He clung to Liu, refusing to let go, no matter what. Because he is adorable when he's confused. Don't go. He clung to Liu, refusing to let go, no matter what. Don't go, he said in a muffled voice. Liu heard him repeat it multiple times before he suddenly came to a realization. He'd said he was a carp spirit. The crown prince had really believed it, so he thought an ordinary thunderstorm was a tribulation. What had he done? And why was this person so dumb? I feel like he'd say that in a way that wasn't offensive. It'd be like, God, why is he so stupid? It's hot. Like, that is how this comes off feeling. Liu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He sniffled emotionally and tightly hugged the crown prince back. Tianxi, don't worry, Liu said. I won't go, nor will I leave you. The little question mark above his head, right? Chapter 152, Fishy Sharing the Country. Liu closed the window. The room was a bit damp from the rain that had been blown in. He called for Xiao Luo to take the kids to the next room. Da Bao kept holding his fish dad's hand, unwilling to let go. Liu hugged Da Bao and kissed him, telling Da Bao to go to the other room. Now the only one left was the drenched crown prince. To be fair, Prince Jing is wrong genre savvy, but he's very smart otherwise. Yeah. Liu brought a clean cloth over and wiped off the water from his face. Mu Tianxi wouldn't look away, afraid that if he wasn't careful, Liu would just fly away. Liu was both concerned and angry. What are you looking at? This is just a thunderstorm, not a tribulation. You didn't even use an umbrella. Do you think you're made of metal? That's a weird phrase to say after someone got... What? Do you think you're made of metal? Why would that be better? Because then you'd rust. The corners of the crown prince's mouth twitched upward and he coughed lightly. I forgot. Liu nagged and scolded him for a bit, but his hands remained gentle. After wiping his face, Liu fetched a clean set of robes, intending to dry the crown prince off and then change his clothes. But the crown prince struggled. Xiao Yu, you got wet too." He wanted to do it himself, but Liu glared at him. The Crown Prince, knowing he had no leg to stand on, had no choice but to shut up. Liu effectively helped him change, then looked at himself. It was true. Most of his robes were wet. Liu took off the outer robe, the wet outer layer, found a blanket, and wrapped himself in it. Mu Tianxi wrapped himself in the blanket as well. The two of them held each other, sharing body heat, and listened to the wind and rain outside. Liu thought it over carefully, but he wasn't quite sure how to broach the topic. He decided to just go for it. "Tianxi, did you want to give me the title of Empress Regent?" The Crown Prince's secret had been revealed. He didn't know how Liu had found out, but that wasn't the problem. Carp spirits probably had their own special ways, but he didn't care about that either. When it came to the issue of the country, he couldn't admit it no matter what. "No," he said coldly. "I haven't thought about it." This asshole wouldn't admit it. He was so close to completing the main quest line. He was so angry he wanted to bite him. But seeing the clear bite marks the Crown Prince still had on the back of his hand from when he gave birth, Liu couldn't do it. "Stupid Crown Prince, listen to me." Liu grabbed the prince's collar. The prince looked down, silently and obediently wrapping Liu in his arms. "Do you think I'm going to ascend after I complete my tribulation? That's not what's going to happen." He couldn't explain the fish scamming system, but Liu was trying to translate this transmigration novel into a cultivation novel for his husband. "I'm going through these tribulations so I can become human. That's why I'm doing this." The Crown Prince couldn't believe it. That must be a lie, he thought. How could there be a Yao in this world who didn't want to be immortal, but instead wanted to be human? But the person telling him this was the carp spirit who had given birth to his children. The Crown Prince tightened his hold around Liu. "Really?" "Yes!" Liu promised hurriedly. At least his desire to become human was absolutely real. "Then why?" The Crown Prince was still worried. "There is no why. I don't want to be an immortal." He gazed with shining eyes at the Crown Prince, who feared him leaving, and he said gently, "I only like you." "You will regret this," the Crown Prince told him, voice hoarse. Yao lived longer than humans. The Crown Prince felt conflicted over Liu wanting to be human. He hoped they could be fated to be together for many lives, but he didn't want to ruin Xiao Yu's future. That was how much he loved this fish. If it came down to himself or Xiao Yu, he would pick Xiao Yu every time. These two people are so cute. Like, it brings out the cuteness aggression in me. It's like, oh, you're so cute. Oh, I won't regret it, really, Liu said loudly. "Tianxi, when you decided to make me the Empress Regent, did you regret it? What if I was scheming and calculating? What if I had ulterior motives for getting close to you? What if everything I did was to mess up this country? Right? I agree. Both Truffle and Shichikiki, I love their love. That's... Oh. You're not, the Crown Prince said confidently. Even if you were, that's all right. You froze. The Crown Prince said it was all right. I honestly think the immortal left behind suffers more. Think of Guardian. Yeah. Oh, I was never one of the people that was like, I want to be immortal. I was like, no, that's going to be hard enough to live one lifetime. Are you kidding me? Like, no. I'll take what I get. Thanks. The Crown Prince held Liu, letting him lay on his chest, his chin touching his forehead. "Liao Kong said that you saved me before, but I couldn't remember it," he said. "But when the imperial physicians treated me for the Shuzi poison, and I was unconscious for a few days, I remembered some things from the past. Right? Immortal in this economy? No, thank you. I'm seriously. Like, no. No, thank you. Many years ago, he had also held this fish like this. The fish had lain on his chest, happily swaying its tail. Xiao Yu, you saved me. I remember now. My life is yours. If it's you, it's all right. You really remember? Liu couldn't believe it. He assumed it was just a side quest, but he really did appear in Mu Tianxi's memories. What he thought was an illusion at the time was actually reality. Mu Tianxi had been given his name because of him. Liu was shocked, but more than that, he was overjoyed. It was a good thing he'd saved little Chubbs, otherwise the result would have been disastrous. Liu had always had a lot of questions. Since everything was on the table now, he could ask them. Tianxi, why did you always touch my head when I was a fish? What does that mean? He asked curiously. He'd learned this move from the adult Mu Tianxi, then taught it to little Chubbs. Back then, little Chubbs hadn't even known how to pet him. But now that he was an adult, he used it on him all the time. What exactly did this mysterious, addicting movement mean? Mu Tianxi smiled as he rubbed his head. Behave, he said. He refused to elaborate any further. Liu hummed, crestfallen. I was like, wait a minute, that's not right. Then why did you save a random fish back then? He could at least ask that, right? Mu Tianxi could answer that question now. He kissed Liu's lips and said, because the sound of the fish's tail suddenly stopped. Huh? Although I didn't remember exactly why at the time, I had memories of the sound of your tail. The sound stopped. That meant the fish was dying. I didn't want you to die. Liu was an emotional mess. So that's what it was. The Crown Prince saved him because he had saved the Crown Prince, which was also why he was able to save him. What came first, the chicken or the egg? This was a fucking endless time loop. But so what? The Crown Prince didn't care at all. He didn't care about being stuck in a paradox. Tianxi, this is the last tribulation. Can you help me? Liu said pitifully. If I can't complete it, I'll turn into fish bones and fish ash. The consequences were that serious? Liu's obsession with the meaning of that head pats is adorable, right? He can't let it go. I love that he hasn't realized that he is the person who started the head pats because he literally taught Prince Jing. The consequences were that serious? How could he bear to let the carp spirit turn into fish bones and fish ash? He nodded solemnly. What do you need me to do? A few days later, it was finally time for the official Crown Prince ceremony. At Fengxian Gate, in front of all his ancestors, Mu Tianxi officially became the Crown Prince. After the edict was read, the emperor granted amnesty to the whole country so that everyone could celebrate. Liu wore the official court robes befitting a crown prince consort, embroidered with fish. Shocker. As the crown prince's official wife, he stood closest to the prince, expression serious, back straight. After the edict was read, the emperor ordered the crown prince to offer sacrifices to the heavens on his behalf. Liu had to kneel down as well, like all the others, but Mu Tianxi walked quickly over to him and grabbed his hand, ignoring everyone else. That wasn't appropriate, was it? Offering sacrifices to the heaven was the crown prince's time to shine. What was he, the consort, doing here? You felt everyone's gaze on him and the pressure was suffocating. Don't be nervous. I already informed Royal Father, the Crown Prince said. Well, I mean, thank goodness. If you're messing around with the royal ceremony, I'm glad you told your dad first. He had ties to this ancient world now. He had a husband who doted on him, an adorable... Wait. I skipped a page. Yep, skipped a page. I was like, that does not make sense contextually. Whoops! Liu glanced at the emperor from a distance. The emperor waved at them. The crown prince and his consort were the future emperor and empress. There was nothing wrong with the consort participating in the ceremony alongside the crown prince. In any case, the crown prince had always been thorough, so Liu didn't need to worry about small details like that. The crown prince led him to the platform made specifically for sacrifices. The platform was very tall, and a statue of a god stood atop it. There were countless offerings in front of the statue. The drum sounded, and Liu focused on the crown prince's movements, completing the complicated ritual along with him. Afterward, the two of them gazed at the crowd beneath the platform. Liu suddenly thought of the people of the western border bowing to him. Facing a similar scene, he now felt confident and at ease. Or perhaps this was just what it felt like to be on top. Enjoy it. It's the only time you will be. Was that all right? The crown prince asked. Yes, Liu nodded expectantly. Xiao Yu wanted to complete his tribulation with a bang. It took the crown prince a while to figure out what that would mean before he picked the date of the ceremony. He wanted to help Xiao Yu make it through his tribulation during the ceremony. Why did you have the same thought immediately? 'Cause it's true. The crown prince gazed into Liu's eyes and said quietly, I do. Liu could hear the system in his head combining with the crown prince's voice. It was both an oath of faithfulness and a sweet declaration of love. I do want to share the country with you, the crown prince said clearly. The sharing the country quest was complete. If Liu were dreaming, he would have woken himself up from laughing. Oh, hello, Esper Lady. Welcome. We just had the crown prince be coronated. And literally we just this second completed the sharing the country quest completed. Crown Prince and Liu had a talking out and reached an understanding. The Crown Prince got scared because there was a thunderstorm and he thought that was the last tribulation for Xiao Yu. So he ran back to the palace in this thunderstorm. They finally had a conversation and Xiao Yu is like, hey, I'm working to become human, not ascend to immortality. Like, I want to stay here. I want to be with you. And they finally reached that understanding. So that was a beautiful moment. I definitely recommend going back and listening to that because it's actually really sweet. But we have now arrived here, so we shall see kind of what shenanigans the system puts them through. So, the sharing the country quest was complete. If Liu were dreaming, he would have woken himself up from laughing. Right? It's super cute. After the ceremony, he found some time to enter the system. Now that he was free, he stood up straight to collect his reward. The system had already given him the final prize pack for completing the main quest. Liu tapped accept excitedly, and his transformation skill went from transforming into a human to transforming into a fish. There were no time restrictions, no limit to how many times he could transform, and he could cancel it at will. This meant, by default, he was no longer a fish. He was a human again. Not only that, he was a human who could turn into a fish at will. It was the same for the merman and man-mer skills, too. They were completely unlimited now. You could perfectly play the part of a carp spirit. On top of all that, his inventory was doubled again. Liu wasn't even sure exactly how big it was anymore. For the final reward, an illusionary door appeared before Liu. What is this? Asked Liu. Congratulations, user, the system replied. You have completed the main quest line and have changed the Tyrant's personality. You can go through that door to return to the modern world. Oh. Liu knew he had transmigrated into a book, so if he went through the door, he'd be leaving this book? Liu took a deep breath. This really was tempting. He'd wanted this from the very first day he'd arrived here, but now that he could leave, he just couldn't take a step. Well, you also just literally promised your husband you weren't going anywhere, so, like, kind of important to not go anywhere. He had ties to this ancient world now. He had a husband who doted on him and adorable children. How could he leave them behind? User, don't worry. If you choose to leave, we will reformat the user's memory so that you won't feel guilty. What? He knew that it was possible, but it would only affect his memories, not his husband's. What kind of a conscience would he have if he left behind his children and husband so that he could be free? I won't leave, said Liu. The Crown Prince had trusted and loved him without regret, so he wouldn't have it any other way. He wouldn't have any regrets either. If he'd been a carp spirit, he wouldn't regret giving up on immortality. As a system fish, he wouldn't regret losing the chance to return to a reality. The system accepted Liu's confirmation. The door flashed a few times, then disappeared. Since the user didn't accept this reward, it will be exchanged for something else. 2 small buttons appeared where the door had been. A row of shiny gold letters appeared above them. 2-day trip to the modern world. User, please select your group members. This reward allows you to temporarily visit the modern world. 2 days in the modern world is only 15 minutes in the ancient world. Would you like to accept? So Prince Jing would suddenly wake up with 5 kids and no spouse. Yeah, basically. Oh, so this was basically just a 15-minute trip back to where he came from? It would be nice to go back to take a look for a little bit. Besides, it wouldn't be a big deal to leave for just 15 minutes. And he could go back with a group. But who should he take? One option was his 4 sons and Shu Bao. If he took one, he'd have to take all of them. He had to be fair. But it would be a disaster if he took 5 kids to a strange place by himself. System, can I take the Tyrant? Liu asked. The system responded, yes. Liu excitedly went to go see the Crown Prince. Your Highness, how would you feel if I took you back to look around the carp spirit nest? I love how he was that quick on the draw to, like, pick up an excuse of, like, where we're going and why it will be so different. Hey, want to go back to the carp spirit nest? Not, hey, I kind of came from a different world. I mean, technically the prince already thinks he came from a different world. Or plane of existence, more so. It very much so is. And I also like that Liu stayed. And it's very sweet that he decides to take Prince Jing to his old home. Chapter 153, Fish Going Back Home. Mu Tianxi had always said yes to his fish. When he found out that they'd be going to the mountain the carp spirit lived on, he'd always assumed Liu was from a mountain. The Crown Prince was even more cooperative than usual. But they couldn't take the kids. They were still young, and if they went along, it might be hard to look after them. So they were going to be left here in the manor. The Crown Prince quickly finished his preparations, which were just to have someone stand guard over the room they were in and to ask Xiao Luo and Wang Shi to watch over the children. Liu didn't know how to add the Crown Prince to the group, so he held the Crown Prince's arm tightly and entered the system. I'm ready, he said. I want to take the Crown Prince with me. How do I do it? User, please tap on the button that will take you to the modern times, the system replied. Liu tapped it and suddenly lost consciousness, sinking into the darkness. When he woke up again, he wasn't in the system or in the Crown Prince's arms. He had fallen asleep at a desk, and his phone had made an imprint on his face. Liu looked up confused and glanced around the room he was in. He couldn't have been more familiar with his surroundings. It was his home in the modern times, and the phone that was pressed into his face. That was his phone. Liu grabbed it to take a look, and what came into view was the web novel he'd been reading before he fell asleep. The Tyrant and his delicate concubine. Huh? Why was it this one? Liu threw his phone to the side, uninterested. He felt like something was missing. What was it? Holy shit! Liu leapt up from the chair. His husband! He couldn't see his husband! His husband who came with him from the ancient world. Tianxi? He yelled, panicking. Tianxi, are you there? His house was empty. He was alone? All right, the system. Liu hurriedly entered the system. It was the same as always. The button he tapped was in progress mode. There was a countdown that was a little under 2 days now. Seeing the countdown, Liu's heart settled back down. It really was only going to be 2 days in the modern world. What do carp spirits have to do with mountains? Maybe it's the whole trying to jump over the heavenly gate thing to become a dragon. Maybe that's why. It might also just be people assuming all Yao live in mountains. Or like, it's magical. Mountains were magical and dangerous and wild, so maybe they thought so were Yao. Like, it was untamed like Yao, so maybe that's why. They did think a lot of mountains had like high spiritual energy as well, so it could be that as well, because they have energy. I don't know. That's a good thought, though. Might be something interesting to look into. Right? Husband. Seeing the countdown, Liu's heart settled back down. It really was only going to be 2 days in the modern world. But he wanted to bring his husband back to his home. What was he going to do if his husband disappeared here? System, I've lost contact with the Crown Prince. Can you tell me where he is? Liu asked. The fish scamming system remained silent. Liu wanted to beat it up. How could a catastrophe like this happen just from visiting his home? What if he couldn't find him within 2 days? Would the Crown Prince be in danger? When the time was up, would Mu Tianxi even be able to return to ancient times? Liu was worried. User, please relax, the system said. You will find him. What was he waiting for? The system said it was possible, then he'd just have to hurry up and go find him. Liu exited the system. His home in the modern era was a 1-bedroom apartment with a living room and bathroom. Altogether, it was less than 50 square meters. When Liu had been very young, his parents had passed away, and this was the home his grandparents had left him. As things stood, if one person in the Li family ate well, then the entire family ate well. As such, when Liu transmigrated, he didn't have many ties to the modern world. He'd long since gotten used to living by himself. Liu spun around to take in the entire room. It wasn't very big, so it was easy to see that there was no one else there. The Crown Prince knew nothing about the modern world, so Liu had to find him as soon as possible. But he had the feeling that since the Crown Prince had come here with him, he couldn't be too far. Liu rushed out with his phone and did a lap around the outside of the building, but he still didn't see anyone that looked like the prince. He'd already planned on where to take his husband when they visited the modern world. At the same time, he'd comfort his husband and let him know that the carp spirit's nest was actually full of humans, and the carp spirit himself was one of them, to completely erase all the Crown Prince's worries that he'd leave after some tribulation. But he'd never expected to lose the Crown Prince when he returned. Right now, finding the Crown Prince was his number one priority. Tianxi! Tianxi! Liu yelled out into the street, but no one responded. Occasionally, a passerby or two glanced at him curiously. Don't worry, calm down. Gives a new meaning to husband hunting. That's hilarious, Truffle. If the Crown Prince heard or saw him, he would respond. He was sure. But he thought of how he had been confused when he returned. Would the Crown Prince be confused too? He'd wanted to give the Crown Prince a great surprise, but now it ended up being a huge shock. Crown Prince was a very careful man. Would he have hidden somewhere? It was possible. Near Liu's building, apart from the road, there was also a supermarket and a park. Liu thought the park seemed like a good place to hide, so he headed straight there. The park wasn't big, and Liu looked behind every tree, but still didn't find any sign of the Crown Prince. Could it be that rather than going somewhere quiet, the Crown Prince went somewhere with more people? Liu tried the supermarket instead, but this supermarket was very large, with throngs of people inside. It was hard to find anyone. Liu didn't know what to do, but such a small thing wouldn't stump him. A new idea popped into his brain, and Liu went to the customer service area of the supermarket. Not long after, the PA system in the supermarket came to life. Mu Tianxi, your father Li Yu is looking for you. Please come to the customer service to meet up with your father Li Yu. He seriously had them do the all call for the kids. That's funny. Because the workers had said they only made announcements about lost children, Liu had no choice but to make such a daring announcement. If the Crown Prince heard it, he would definitely come, and customer service was easy to find since it had a large visible sign. He thought it'd be difficult to find the Crown Prince in such a large supermarket, so he might as well make the prince come find him. He'd just apologize later. Liu was confident in his plan, but he waited for a long time and still no one came. The workers who made the announcement for him looked at him sympathetically. Young man, why hasn't your son come yet? Do you want me to call the police for you? Never mind, the Crown Prince was an illegal resident. There was no way he could call the police. Liu thanked the workers and left his number, asking the workers to continue waiting for him. He decided to keep looking. Although the announcement had been broadcast to the whole supermarket, what if the Crown Prince didn't hear it? Liu walked around to no success, and his phone didn't ring either. It had been half a day since he returned, but he still hadn't found the prince. What was he going to do? The Crown Prince wasn't in the supermarket either. Liu stood among the crowd, not knowing where to go. Liu? Are you Liu? A voice floated over, catching Liu's attention. Sorry that my voice just cracked. Liu looked over, only to see a tall, skinny, clean man in gold glasses looking over at him in surprise. Liu didn't recognize him. Who are you? He asked cautiously. The man adjusted his glasses and chuckled. I used to live in your building. I moved away after a while, but I still remember you. Don't you remember me? Liu really didn't have any recollection. The building he lived in was old and in disrepair. Many of his neighbors had moved away. But because the rent was cheap, new people always kept moving in, so he had a great deal of neighbors over the years. He couldn't remember all of them. But this man knew his address, which meant he saw him often but never said anything. Liu carefully observed this person. Is there something you need? He asked slightly. Nothing. I just suddenly saw you, so I wanted to say hi. You're in university now, right? At which school? Liu had just finished Gaokao. He'd received his acceptance letter, but before he could go report, he'd ended up transmigrating. His grades weren't very good, so he'd gotten into a very mediocre school. After Liu told him which school, his neighbor said happily, I live near there. Why don't I take you to see your future school, take you out for food, and we can catch up? The man patted his pocket and pulled out the keys to a luxury car. Liu furrowed his brows and backed up a step. He wasn't comfortable with how overly friendly this person was, and the way he casually showed off his wealth. He seemed to be hinting at something to him. After all the palace drama he'd experienced in another world, he was a lot more wary of strangers. He shook his head. Thanks, but no thanks. It's really not a problem. You don't have to be such a stranger. We're neighbors, after all. The man stepped forward to grab Liu. That's a no. That's red flag, no, no. They were in the fresh food section where there were relatively few people. Liu was about to dodge him so he could reject him more seriously when a large, thick shadow suddenly rushed out from behind him. Yeah, definitely stranger danger. What the hell was that? Liu was dumbfounded. The man in front of him was still trying to flirt with Liu, but Liu's attention was entirely on the black shadow behind him. The shadow seemed to be alive, like a long, thick piece of fabric. It twisted in the air and flew towards the man's forehead. It's a beautiful picture. Yep, it's definitely a yeet. We will add it to the chart. Love the fish-shaped shadow. All right, we are at yeet 4. Our final yeet, probably. Whack! What a sharp sound. The man was stunned by the sudden slap, and a wig fell from his head, revealing a shiny, bare scalp. This scene seemed familiar somehow. The man yelped, turned around, and the shadow once again struck accurately. This time, the man was slapped in the face. He looked like a braised egg. I was wrong. I will count the slap as a yeet. It is 5. The dark shadow slapped him a few more times without pause. 6. Oh, wrong pen. Finest yeet there was. The man kept on screaming, unable to see exactly what was hitting him. He just felt wet all over, and the pain was making him break out in goosebumps. He had a guilty conscience to begin with, and now that he was in this state, he didn't say anything more. He grabbed his wig from where it had fallen to the ground and ran away. He was too lazy to bother with this playboy any further. He knelt down to look at the shadow. The black shadow lay on the ground quietly, unmoving. An epic yeet grand finale, right? That was when Liu realized what it was. A large, mighty black fish the length of a person's arm and as thick as a person's wrist. Its scales were black and shiny like hair. If it had been anything else, fine. But a fish. Wait, fuck, that was this? It couldn't be right. Liu quickly picked the large black fish up, glancing around. Not too far ahead was a large fish tank housing fish for sale. There was a puddle in front of the tank. Liu figured that this must be where the fish had jumped out from. The fish was incredibly heavy. When Liu held it, it didn't struggle. It just lay in his arms with none of its previous thunderous aura. Its dark eyes stared at Liu, its tail swishing lightly. The more Liu looked, the more shocked he became. In a very quiet voice, he said, "Your Highness? Husband? If it's you, can you rub my hand?" He was afraid the fish wouldn't be able to hear him. But after he repeated it twice, the large black fish still didn't move. Liu sighed, thinking he'd gone insane. How could the Crown Prince turn into a fish? Sure, he transmigrated as a fish, but that didn't mean that when he transmigrated back, the Crown Prince would turn into a fish. That made no sense at all. Liu did his best to convince himself, but suddenly the fish in his arms leapt up and nimbly rubbed against Liu's face. After that, it even curled its tail around Liu's finger. Liu completely froze. Holy shit, now he was in big trouble. This black fish really was the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince couldn't stand the creepy man flirting with his wife, so even though he'd turned into a fish, he had to jump out to protect his wife. No, 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 this should have been a simple 2-day trip, but his husband had turned into a fish. What was he going to do? The Crown Prince turns into a fish. Chapter 154. Right, now it's a true fish family. The Crown Prince had turned into a large black fish. Liu held him tightly. Though the employee in the fresh food section didn't hear Liu whispering to the black fish, he had witnessed the fish suddenly leap out and slap another customer. The employee was shocked. When he recovered, he asked Liu mechanically, "Do you want this fish, sir?" Liu nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Yes, yes, yes. He was afraid the employee would suspect something, so he laughed to smooth things over. I didn't expect this fish to be so agile. Can't believe it jumped out and slapped someone. The employee thought about it, but that really did seem to be what had happened, so he wiped his sweat and said, "Then please weigh the fish, sir." Oh, right. This was part of the fish buying process. Liu didn't need the employee's help. He went to weigh the fish Crown Prince by himself. The fish Crown Prince weighed 8 pounds 6 ounces, even heavier than little Shu Bao. Liu was very quick and sometimes urged the employees to be quicker. It didn't matter how expensive it was going to be. He could just close his eyes and pay with his phone. Once he'd weighed the fish, the employee finally seemed to have recovered from the shock and casually pulled out a knife. This fish is a little heavy. It will be hard to carry. Should I clean it for you? He was horrified. No need. I want to keep the fish. The employee was bewildered. Everyone came to the fresh food section to buy food. This was the first time he'd seen someone who wanted to keep the fish. He wanted to ask this young man if he was kidding when he felt a cold chill on his back. When the employee pulled out the knife, he thought he'd felt a little cold, but he hadn't paid it any mind. Now he was covered in goosebumps, as though he was being watched. The employee sneezed. This isn't a pet fish, he advised Liu. It's mainly for eating. Frying, baking, or stewing are all good options. Liu snuck a glance at the fish in his arms. Although it was darkly colored and difficult to interpret, the fish was tense, as though it was angry. Liu was afraid the Crown Prince would jump up and slap the grocery store employee too, so he rushed to say, "It's okay if it's not meant to be a pet fish. I like it." As soon as the words were out of this strange young man's mouth, the employee no longer felt cold. The Crown Prince nestled in Liu's arms. Liu was afraid he'd been outside of the water for too long. Though his house was nearby, it would be hard to carry him home, so he bought an extra-large basin, asked the employee for some water, and placed the Crown Prince carefully inside. The employee didn't understand. You can just use a large bag? He really couldn't. The Crown Prince had had a variety of beautiful fish tanks made for him. Now that it was his turn, he just got a plastic bag. Although he was poor, he wanted the Crown Prince to be comfortable. Liu carried the basin home. The moment he put the Crown Prince into the water, he felt a lot better. The fish Crown Prince was thick and long. Even the largest basin in the supermarket wasn't big enough. The large, black fish had to curl up inside and didn't really have space to swim. When Liu got home, he immediately filled the bathtub with water and put the Crown Prince in there instead. The Crown Prince started swimming slowly. Liu brought over a chair and sat down next to the tub. He said, expression serious, "Don't worry. I'll definitely find a way to turn you back." The Crown Prince fish wasn't worried at all. He swam a lap in the tub, then poked his head out of the water to nuzzle Liu's finger. "Your Highness, are you hungry?" Liu asked tentatively. "Do you want some fish food?" Liu had purchased the fish food at the same time as the basin. Liu had made sure to ask whether or not it was made from 100% flour and if it was completely natural and non-toxic. He'd tried some himself first. Modern fish food was much lower quality, inferior to the ancient version in both taste and texture. But it was better than nothing. Liu put the fish food next to the crown prince's mouth, but to his surprise, the prince, who had been very cooperative ever since he turned into a fish, turned and slapped the food away. That's not good. That's very wasteful, Liu instructed impatiently. But the crown prince simply refused to eat fish food. Because he was very large, his tail was very strong. Somehow, he managed to jump out of the tub and onto Liu. Liu rushed to grab him. Classic crown prince. He worked out how to move this freely already. All right. 7 it is. The weather was hot, so Liu was wearing a large, oversized t-shirt. The fish rubbed against his pale neck and started to burrow inside the t-shirt. He was so ticklish. He burst into laughter, almost tearing up. He fished the thirsty crown prince back out, and the fish's glistening eyes glared back at him fiercely. Asshole, what do you think you're doing? Don't move around randomly. I'll come up with a plan right now. Liu put the crown prince back into the tub. He entered the system to demand answers. What's going on? Why did the crown prince turn into a fish? And yes, Liu, the fish food snob. Actually, I guess Prince Jing would be the fish food snob, because at least Liu ate it. It's the system's fault he'd transmigrated as a fish, so it must be the system who turned the crown prince into one too. The Tyrant does not exist in this world, the system explained. So he has to be a fish first. The corners of Liu's lips twitched. That was how the system answered him back then, too. So it was the system's fault. Then how do I return the crown prince to his human form? Liu asked. The fish scamming system immediately updated with a new side quest. User, side quest, Tyrant turning into fish is now available. Do you want to accept? He had completed all the fish scamming system's main quests, but occasionally a side quest would still pop up. As soon as Liu heard the name, he selected accept without question. The system continued. Please help the Tyrant return to his human form. The Tyrant needs to kiss the user 3 times. Really? Hello, system. Are you actually run by the Tyrant? Why did Liu get such difficult tasks to turn back into a human, but the prince got the script of The Princess and the Frog? But his complaint lasted only a second. Liu was very afraid the system might change its mind and not turn the prince back into a human after all. He accepted the quest and exited the system. Because he'd passed out on a chair, he noticed the black fish that was the crown prince was just watching over him from the water. Liu's heart grew warm. He wanted to turn the prince back as soon as possible. He lifted the large black fish out of the bath, holding on to its fins, and examined the fish carefully. The fish looked similar to the one the crown prince had painted in their family portrait, he realized. The system definitely plays favorites. I agree, Truffle. The crown prince fish silently blew an inviting bubble at Liu. Liu snorted. It was a little hard to start, but wasn't it just a few kisses? He could do it. Liu closed his eyes to kiss the fish. He wasn't sure where exactly he kissed, but his lips did get covered in scales. His hands suddenly grew heavy. When Liu opened his eyes, a familiar face appeared before him. The crown prince was back. Tianxi, Liu smiled as he pinched the crown prince's face. Mu Tianxi held him tightly. This was their first hug in the modern world. Liu was still sitting on the chair, which was actually just an old-fashioned stool. The crown prince held him too tightly, and as they both leaned back, they fell into the tub together. The tub was a little small for them. He'd filled it with water for the fish crown prince to swim in, so it was a bit cold. Ouch. Liu yelled at him to wait as he felt for the hot water tab. After he'd turned it on, he climbed onto Mu Tianxi, shivering. The tub slowly filled with warm water, and some occasionally splashed out. Liu's t-shirt became completely twisted and wrinkled. When it landed on the floor of the small bathroom, it splattered water across the room. Liu thought he would drown in the raging waves. A pair of warm lips descended, kissing him on the eyelids. They lay together on the tiny single bed, both listening to the heart. Both lay together. Let me start that over. They lay together on the tiny single bed, both listening to the hearts beating in each other's chests. Tianxi, Liu said after a while, have you realized? Now that the crown prince had turned into a fish, Liu thought he ought to have figured some things out. Mu Tianxi just rubbed his hair, smiling. Originally, Liu had planned to reveal everything to the crown prince on their trip back home. But because the prince had disappeared, he hadn't had the chance. Now that he was found, Liu mustered up the courage to explain. I brought you back because I want to tell you this is where I came from. I was born here and then accidentally arrived in your world. That's when I turned into a fish. I think it's probably the same reason why you turned into a fish this time. I'm a human. I just happened to turn into a fish. Crown Prince paused. So you're not a Yao? Exactly, said Liu. I'm a human just like you. Because my world and your world are so different, I wasn't sure I could make you believe it. I didn't even know how to explain why I had become a fish. So I had to just admit to being a Yao. The tribulations I mentioned before, that was because I had to do certain things to return to human form. So I really just want to be human. I won't leave you. You don't have to worry, he added quietly. He knew the crown prince was always worried he would leave. No matter how much he professed his love, it didn't matter. And all because he had said he was a carp spirit. After everything that had happened, he was confident in the crown prince's love for him, so it was time to reassure the prince. Luckily, this was a great chance, especially now that the crown prince had experienced being a fish. It should be a lot easier for him to accept. After all, the crown prince was not a Yao. I understand what you mean, the crown prince said after some thought. After Mu Tianxi suddenly arrived and realized he had turned into a black fish, he had been squeezed into a fish tank with 2 crabs and 3 turtles. After the shock had passed, many things had occurred to him. Why was this immortal Carp Mountain so different from how he imagined? There were hordes of people passing by, looking at him, and they were all wearing strange clothes. Why had he turned into a fish? Xiao Yu had come here with him. The crown prince wanted to find Xiao Yu, but after a few attempts to leap out, he'd always land back in the water. He didn't know where Xiao Yu was. All he could do was stay put and wait. When the PA announced Mu Tianxi and Dad Liu, the crown prince knew Xiao Yu had to be nearby. But he couldn't leave the fish tank. Then, when he finally saw Xiao Yu, a random man was flirting with him. Crown Prince was furious, and he leapt up to teach the man a lesson. The scene seemed vaguely familiar. The Crown Prince remembered Xiao Yu had done a similar thing once. Turned out, he and Xiao Yu were quite similar in some ways. When Liu came clean to him, Mu Tianxi finally understood that Xiao Yu had always been human to begin with. That was why he didn't fear the Taoist priest or the black dog's blood. Tianxi, are you angry? Liu asked weakly. He hadn't anticipated that his helpless decision to pretend to be a carp spirit would cause so many problems. Mu Tianxi shook his head slowly. He didn't mind when Xiao Yu was a Yao. How could he mind now that he was a human? But this did open his eyes a little. Crown Prince smiled. So, what sort of things did you need to do for your tribulations? He moved his finger to Liu's lips, tracing the shape sensually. Were the many kisses you gave me just now one of those tasks? Privately thought that this kind of tribulation was much better than being struck by lightning. Glad he's into it. Liu had clearly already been intimate with the prince, but for some reason talking about kissing still made him blush. His brain churned desperately as he tried to argue. It wasn't many kisses, just 3 kisses. The crown prince kept smiling. 3 kisses. So, was he being teased? Alright. Next. The two of them snuggled together for a while. The crown prince really liked this house that was filled with Xiao Yu. He practically wanted to stay here, snuggling with Xiao Yu forever. But Liu couldn't waste this rare opportunity to visit home in bed. So after a while, he shoved at the crown prince. No, we have to go walk around outside. Crown prince had no choice but to get up. Liu had wanted to spend some time staring at his husband's face for a while, but he suddenly realized a very, very serious problem. The crown prince had turned from a fish into a human, so he didn't have clothes. As expected of the fish scamming system. Holy shit! Husband, come back! This is a cultivated society, you can't go streaking! Liu decided to go buy his husband a set of clothes first. But the crown prince refused to let him go alone, in case anyone without a brain decided to try to harass him. He insisted on going with Liu. Liu had no choice but to dig through his closet for a baggy t-shirt. It was a little big on him, so when he wore it, it looked effortless and casual. But the crown prince was a lot bigger than him. On him, it was very fitted. They could make do with the shirt, but not with pants. The crown prince grabbed a pair of basketball shorts, wanting to try them out, but Liu was too embarrassed. Asshole, don't randomly wear my pants. Dude, you've worn his underwear. Why are you getting embarrassed about or basketball shorts? Like, I don't mean to criticize, but like, for real. Like, that's not as intimate as his under things that you were literally running around in outside. Just saying. Chapter 155. Fish couple reflecting the moon. Liu finished dressing the crown prince. The crown prince wore a tight t-shirt and Liu's biggest beach shorts. He'd purchased them online, but bought a size too large, then forgot to return them, so they were brand new. Finally, they could leave. The crown prince was very confused over why he couldn't wear Liu's pants. Even though he had clothes now, Liu still wanted to take the crown prince to buy more. Actually, after online shopping had become popular, he rarely went to physical stores anymore. Everyone said buying online was cheaper. But right now, there was no time to wait for delivery. They had to buy some clothes right away. Liu led the crown prince to a menswear store. The crown prince's handsome, delicate features attracted a lot of attention, and Liu was very proud. In modern times, his husband could be a celebrity. But unfortunately, they wouldn't be able to stay long. Oh, dude, you'd be so jealous if your husband became like a model or TV star. You would not like it. Liu wanted to dress the crown prince nicely, and the store they went to sold styles that were cool and chic. Liu brought everything to dress him from head to toe, then picked a few modern, attractive suits. Money in the modern world was merely a worldly possession, so he didn't hesitate to spend it on his husband. After all, he would be returning to the ancient world with the prince. Liu didn't feel any pain at all. Everyone in the store was either buying or trying on clothes. Liu brought over the things he'd picked out and pushed the crown prince into the changing room. After arriving in the modern world, Mu Tianxi had turned into a fish. First, he'd been stuck in the fish tank at the supermarket. Then he'd been rescued by Liu and taken home. He hadn't had a chance to see much yet until Liu brought him out. Even though the crown prince had always been a calm man, he couldn't help but be shocked. Xiao Yu was a human, not a Yao, and this wasn't the carp spirit's immortal mountain. But it was even more dizzying and dazzling. The crown prince was a little overwhelmed. Liu had told the Crown Prince to go try on clothes, but the Crown Prince wasn't entirely sure how to go about it. He was very curious about this tiny room that was only decorated with a curtain. He pushed and knocked for a while, but nothing happened. Liu suddenly remembered. Oh, right. His husband didn't know how to wear modern clothing. He hurriedly squeezed himself into the changing room, too, to help the Crown Prince change. Inside, not only could he help, he could also see the results immediately. If he wasn't satisfied, he could adjust the outfit until it was. Liu picked 2 outfits that looked the best on the Crown Prince and got the exact same thing for himself in his size. They'd already worn matching couple outfits countless times in the past. Now they could take on a modern couple outfit. All the newlywed couple wanted to do was cuddle together. They'd cuddled plenty of times at home, but it was still hard to avoid kissing and hugging each other wherever they went. Changing was usually a quick affair for him, but Liu and the Crown Prince spent nearly half an hour in the changing room. When the 2 of them came out, they were wearing identical suits. Aside from Liu's lips being a little red and swollen and the slight redness rimming his eyes, there was nothing out of place. Oh my goodness, they got up to some shenanigans in the dressing room. Liu pulled out his phone to pay, then taught the Crown Prince how to pose and took a picture to set as his wallpaper. The photo came out very well. They were both smiling. He was beaming widely, and the Crown Prince wore a gentle smile. The Crown Prince was good at painting, but when he saw the photo, he gained a deep respect for this little box called a cell phone. Liu didn't have the option of claiming that this was Yao magic anymore, so still smiling, he taught the Crown Prince to take a photo with the phone. He'd learned the physics behind a camera in school, but he'd given all that back to the teacher. There wasn't enough time to explain everything in detail, so they might as well just enjoy themselves. The Crown Prince, in his stylish suit, took pictures of nearly everything. These 2 are leaving a trail of traumatized retail employees wherever they go, right? Liu let him have his fun. Who knew that the cold-blooded tyrant from the book liked photography? I mean, he likes calligraphy, and it's really good at drawing calligraphy. Along the way, Liu bought some takoyaki from the shop, and they ate it together as they walked. The Crown Prince resisted these weird round things at first and asked in a low voice, "This is seafood?" Liu immediately understood his concerns. "It's octopus," he chuckled. "It's not a fish like us." The Crown Prince liked it when he said us, and he also liked that the takoyaki wasn't made of fish. Keeping an open mind, he tried a bit of it and found that it was indeed very fragrant. The carp and the large black fish quickly devoured the takoyaki. Then, Liu took the Crown Prince to a history museum. This was somewhere he'd always wanted to take the Crown Prince. In order to understand the culture of a place, aside from researching online, one could also go to a history museum. Fair point. Liu didn't know what kind of revelations coming to the modern world would give the Crown Prince. All he could do was show his world to him as much as possible. Didn't know what kind of revelations coming to the modern world would give the Crown Prince. All he could do was show his world to him as much as possible. Inside the museum, there were relics from each of the dynasties of this world, from various countries as well. There was the sword of the emperor and even the jars and pots that the common folk used to make pickles. Each piece was accompanied by a voice recording to explain its name, use, and significance. One era always had to fall for a new one to rise. The Crown Prince listened attentively with his brows furrowed, deep in thought. After they were done at the museum, Liu took his husband to the amusement park. "Oh, honey, if you were overstimulated at a shopping mall, you're going to lose your mind at an amusement park." This was Liu's selfish little desire. If he could never come back here again, he had to get his money's worth now. "I've never been here before," he told the Crown Prince. Every time I saw kids my age go, I'd always be envious. All right, I'll give you the pass. The tickets were a little expensive, and Liu's family had been tight on money when he was young, so they couldn't afford them. Later, when he grew up, he was finally able to afford them, but he didn't have anyone to go with. The Crown Prince said firmly, "I'll go with you." Liu wanted to go on the roller coaster, and the two of them lined up for a long time. But the ride that flipped the world upside down only lasted a few minutes. Liu held the Crown Prince tightly, his face pale. The Crown Prince fared a little better, but he felt that they were paying money to suffer. This isn't suffering," Liu insisted. "It's a way to release your emotions." Because on the roller coaster, everyone was screaming. Nobody would notice that a certain person among them looked a little sad. Having experienced a roller coaster, Liu glanced at the crowd behind him and felt a flash of melancholy at having to say goodbye. The Crown Prince saw it and held his hand once again. "I'm here," he said quietly. "I'll stay with you." "The next ride is bumper cars. I've really wanted to do this as a kid, too." Liu fluttered his eyelashes. That was 2 whole reallys, so of course the Crown Prince had to accompany him until the end. Bumper cars were a ride for children, so the cars weren't very large. For Liu to sit in one with the Crown Prince, they both had to scrunch up in the seats, knee to knee. Liu wasn't very familiar with the ride, and he fidgeted for a while. Perhaps he pressed something he wasn't supposed to, because they started spinning on the spot. "I'll fix it, I promise!" Liu panicked. He wanted to show his husband how cool he was, but he was making a fool of himself instead. "It's all right." The Crown Prince seemed to have thought of something. The corners of his lips tilted up in a slight smile. Perhaps because they couldn't control a bumper car as 2 fully grown men, they ended up being judged by their peers, and car after car came and rammed into them. Liu and the Crown Prince started spinning in a new direction. The Crown Prince was furious. How dare they bump into Xiao Yu's car? Liu hurried to hold him down. "It's Yanxi, that's how you play this game! Don't get mad!" Liu had finally figured out how to control the car. "Watch this," he said. Liu drove the car after the one that had bumped into them and ran into them harshly. "Ha ha ha ha! Time for revenge!" The Crown Prince really didn't understand why they had to bang into each other like this, but seeing how much fun Xiao Yu was having and that he didn't seem sad anymore, the Crown Prince shook off any negative feelings he had. But he couldn't just sit in the car and let his wife do all the work. The Crown Prince pushed a red button for Xiao Yu. The car immediately rammed into a wall. "Tianxi!" Liu yelled. "Don't touch anything!" Liu led his husband around the park, conquering all the rides and attractions. The 2 of them took a lot of photos, even one of the bumper cars. In the blink of an eye, a whole day had passed. When they returned to Liu's house, the 2 of them were wearing the same t-shirt. Liu, as the host, decided to make dinner. He found some fresh cucumber in the fridge. Oh, poor Prince Jing. The Crown Prince knew what this meant. Liu smashed the cucumber as usual, but in the time it took him to boil some noodles and come back out of the kitchen, the Crown Prince had already eaten all the cucumbers. He didn't even leave behind any sauce. How could my husband be this hungry, Liu thought. Poor thing. He didn't think much else of it. He brought over 2 bowls of plain noodles, one each for him and the prince. After they ate, both of them were slightly overheated. Liu turned on a small fan so that it would blow cool air over them when they lay down. I love doing that. The Crown Prince looked curiously at the object that would create wind. Xiao Yu said this was called an appliance. The little appliance dispersed the heat a bit. Liu and the Crown Prince looked into each other's eyes and leaned into each other at the same time, their lips slowly touching. Originally, Liu had wanted to encourage the Crown Prince to do a little something on the small bed, but they'd only kissed for a second when, with a pop, the Crown Prince returned to being a large black fish. Brought to a sudden stop like this, Liu felt that he was about to explode. Fish scamming system! Come here! I promise not to beat you up! Why has the Crown Prince turned into a fish again? But the system didn't need to explain. Liu already knew the answer. The Crown Prince's time limit was up, the same way his own transformation used to function. He had kissed the Crown Prince 3 times to transform him into a human, so Liu picked up the big black fish and kissed him a few more times. Nothing happened. The system chimed in, "User, please try again tomorrow." Okay, so the once-a-day thing was just like him too. Liu had no other ideas. He put the fish Crown Prince back into the bathtub. The black fish rubbed up against him, telling him to go rest and not to worry. But tomorrow was still a long way away. Liu didn't want to be apart from the Crown Prince for even a second. He remembered that after he completed the main quest line, he could turn into a fish whenever he wanted now. Did that skill still work in modern times? Liu tried to activate the skill. Unaffected by time or space, his skill worked at once, and he turned into a silver koi speckled with gold. Liu jumped into the bathtub and swam a few laps around the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince stared at him, shocked. "Tianqi, I came to keep you company," said Liu, smiling. The Crown Prince was larger than Liu. He dove down and swam right underneath Liu. "Husband, what are you doing?" The Crown Prince started to float upward, carrying Liu on his back. Moonlight filtered in through the window, and the 2 fish in the tub were exactly like the night sky, silver as the spotless moonlight and black as the deep night. All right, one sec. I think we're down to the last chapter. Oh, and then we've got a very short epilogue. It's almost over. Like, what a fun way to end it, but also a little sad. Chapter 156, Crystal Fish Palace. The next day, Liu helped Mu Tianqi recover his human form and took him to the places he still wanted to go. Yesterday, they'd spent the whole day outside. At first, the Crown Prince was amazed. Then he gradually began to ponder what he had seen. Liu supported him in this. Maybe if he got some new ideas, they could bring about change in the ancient world. They didn't have much time left. Since the Crown Prince had such plans, Liu thought they might as well bring some local specialties back. He could still transform after all, so he probably still had his inventory too. Liu checked that he had what he had in his inventory. He had put all these things in there when he was still in the ancient world and could take them out now. By that logic, he should still be able to take out the things he'd put in from the modern world when he'd returned to the ancient world. Things were much more convenient with his golden finger. At first, Liu wanted to buy all kinds of books and put them inside, but physical books were heavy. It would be hard to collect everything he needed in such a short time. Cleverly, Liu bought 2 e-readers and subscribed to multiple e-book providers. Knowledge was the ladder to improvement. Liu wanted to set up the ladder for the Crown Prince. Now that he had the e-reader, he'd have to find a way to keep it charged. There was no electricity in ancient times, so Liu bought a solar-powered charger and a portable battery. That way, he could bring his phone too. There was no signal in the palace, of course, but he could at least use it as a camera, and that way he could keep the photos they'd taken as well. Since he was bringing back local specialties, it would be good if he could bring some common medicines. Liu bought some at the pharmacy, and when he was paying, he came across a bunch of boxes with things like ultra thin and dynamic, free your passion. Liu had never paid attention to that kind of thing before, but weren't these prophylactics? They were even on sale. Buy 10, get 1 free. 20 RMB off 100 RMB. What good timing! Liu bought several cases at once. The other customers looked at him with ridicule in their eyes. Liu might have been embarrassed, but he didn't back away at all. This would affect his and his husband's happiness for the rest of their lives, so of course he had to buy. Because Liu had suffered a lot giving birth to Xue Bei, the crown prince felt bad and decided to never let him give birth in human form again. Fish form was up for consideration, but it would be hard to get away with in the palace. Ever since Liu recovered, he and the prince had tried many different methods, but contraception in ancient times was all a little off. They didn't want to drink any medicine, so in the end, they just had to control themselves. Liu was fine, but it was very difficult for the crown prince. Stuffed with multiple boxes, the inventory was near full. The crown prince insisted on taking the clothes Liu had bought for him. There was no way he could wear those back in ancient times, but the crown prince didn't want to leave behind anything that Xiao Yu had given him. It would be good enough to just hang it up somewhere. Liu had still wanted to take the crown prince to see magnificent buildings and ride the high-speed rail, but the crown prince said he just wanted to see the places Liu frequented. There were many amazing things in the world, but what the crown prince cared about most was Liu. This couple. Liu was moved. He decided to take the crown prince to his elementary school, his middle school, and his high school instead. He showed him the classrooms he'd once studied in, the desks he once sat at, and the soccer field he once ran on. The crown prince couldn't understand most of it, but listened to Liu tell stories about his childhood. The young, cute Xiao Yu seemed to appear before his eyes. The last stop was a gravesite. Liu's parents had died when he was young, and his grandparents who raised him had long since passed away as well. Liu put down a bouquet of flowers before the grave and told them that he was now married to a crown prince from ancient times. He wouldn't show any sadness anymore because he knew his family and the crown prince all wanted him to live on happily. When he learned that this was Xiao Yu's family, Mu Tianxi imitated Liu and bowed toward the grave. The time limit of 2 days was up. In the end, the two of them woke up in their room in the crown prince's manor. The incense they had lit before they left was still smoking. Liu rubbed his eyes forcefully. His trip back to modern times with the prince couldn't just be a dream, right? The crown prince looked at him with a smile on his face. Pulling up his sleeve, he showed Liu his hand. There was now a scale-like mark on the back of it. Is this? Liu was stunned. After a trip to the modern world, could the crown prince now also transform? Was the crown prince also now a fish with a system? How could the tyrant lead male become a fish with a system? Before Liu could figure it out, the system said clearly, "Congratulations to the user for completing the side quest, Tyrant turning into a fish. The tyrant now has the ability to transform. This ability can only be used once a day, and he can only maintain his fish form for 2 hours at a time. There are no level-ups available for this ability." Aha! The crown prince didn't need to do any quests. He wasn't a beleaguered system fish like him. This ability was basically just for fun. But would the crown prince turn into a fish for fun during his free time? Probably not, right? As it turned out, he was completely wrong. The crown prince loved being a fish, especially being a fish with Liu. Liu himself was delighted. After he'd become the crown prince consort, he'd had more and more things to get done. Turning into a fish let him find some peace and quiet, far away from the hustle and bustle of life. If the crown prince turned into a large black fish, Liu would transform too. It was like they were respecting their oath from the modern era. He liked being with the crown prince. The first time the children saw the large black fish version of the crown prince, they didn't know it was their dad, and they were all frightened to tears. After they found out, though, they all wanted to turn back into fish and swim around with their dads. Now, Xue Bao was the only one who'd never been a fish in their family. Liu thought about the family portrait the crown prince had painted. Even the crown prince could turn into a fish now, and the 4 sons would be able to choose to turn into fish once they turned 7, so perhaps Xue Bao would also be able to one day do so too. There would be no need to feel sorry for her. Liu had brought the children gifts from the modern era, a set of tiny, colorful picture books. They were fun, pretty, and not too conspicuous. He wanted to tell the children the bedtime stories he'd been told as a child. That's cute. That's really cute. Meanwhile, Liu handed the carefully prepared e-reader over to the Crown Prince and taught him how to use it. Because the words on the e-reader were slightly different from ancient writing, Liu, who was still being taught how to read and write despite already having 5 kids, could finally turn the tables and teach the Crown Prince instead. Right? He sat in the Crown Prince's lap, teaching him an entire page of simplified Chinese when he realized that this was the position they'd used when the Crown Prince taught him. Now he was teaching the Crown Prince, yet they were still in the same position. Something didn't quite seem right. With the way this was going, Yu Lao Shi was going to get eaten at the end of the lesson. But frankly, there was nothing scary about being eaten. They could take the chance to try out what ultra thin and dynamic felt like. And so life at the Crown Prince Manor saw some welcome new changes. The Crown Prince settled down to read the books on the e-reader. He picked the ones he was interested in and slowly read through them all. If there was something he didn't understand, he'd ask Liu, and Liu would do his best to explain using the language in the book. He didn't know how this world would change, but if the Crown Prince needed him, he'd do his best to support him. The Crown Prince said he would present him with a different flourishing era, and Liu couldn't wait. All right, we have arrived at the epilogue. It is towards the end. Epilogue. A month later, the Emperor personally held a grand wedding for the Crown Prince and Liu. The Emperor was very happy with the Crown Prince. He was starting to come up with more and more of his own new ideas. A year later, the Emperor abdicated the throne to the Crown Prince and became the Grand Emperor, focusing on enjoying his time with his grandchildren, as he should. On the day the new emperor ascended to the throne, the entire country was granted amnesty, and despite opposition, he appointed Crown Prince Consort Liu as Empress Regent. Usually, when a prince becomes the emperor, he would start to fill up his harem. But Mu Tianxi didn't. From Prince Jing to Crown Prince to Emperor, he only had one person by his side, and his title was different from everyone else's: Empress Regent. This was beyond most people's wildest dreams. The Emperor showered the Empress with love, and this Empress Liu also demonstrated extraordinary talent and prowess. Together, the couple began to enact change everywhere. These changes brought about 800 years of peace and prosperity, but of course, that was all long after the fact. After ascending to the throne, apart from appointing his Empress, he had another important task in mind: renovating the palace. Those who were familiar with the Crown Prince Manor, like Wang Gonggong and Yi Shizi, were all expecting this. The emperor, who once turned his entire manor into a giant pond, insisted on renovating the palace so it could be even more majestic pond. Apparently, beneath the water, there was a beautiful miniature palace, aptly named the Crystal Palace. Inside the Crystal Palace lived the pet fish that the emperor had had back when he was just a prince. It was a silver koi with flecks of gold. People saw it often. This koi fish was always playing with a large black fish. Sometimes they would be surrounded by a few smaller fish. At first, there were 4 of them. Then it became 5. Everyone said these pets took after their masters. The emperor's 7 pet fish looked extremely like the emperor, the empress, and their 5 royal children. Yeah, the biggest fish tank ever. And with that, we have arrived at the end of this disabled tyrant and his beloved pet fish. Like, I'm a little sad. Like, it is such a good story, but like, you know, when you finish that good story and you're like, it was so good. Right, nothing's too good for Xiaoyu. It really is so good. And it's such a sweet ending. I like that it wasn't super ambiguous either, because like some of our earlier books, it was like kind of like, oh, that's the end. And this is like, no, it's the end. So I appreciate it. Yeah, now to move to fanfic. If you find some good ones, definitely share. Oh, fanfic. I forgot to do our fanfic this time. Our 2 recommendations. I thought our intro was a little short today. No wonder. Hang on. Let me pull it up. Okay. Here we go. I love them going into the modern world and bringing stuff back. Like they got to take advantage of the system a bit at the end. I agree. This book is so good. All right. Kind of a little backwards, but here are the 2 recommendations that I presented this week for Scum Villain and MXTX. I also was hoping you had a great weekend. I could have read like 5 more books in the series. Yeah, I kind of wish we saw a little bit more of like the babies growing up and some misadventures from them, but that's okay. It was a really sweet ending. So, speaking of babies, for the Scum Villain recommendation, I picked The Bamboo Baby That Came from the Heavens by Passing Ghost Friend. And it's rather short and sweet one-shot, and it's good old OG Shenxing Qiu vibes. Yeah, each get a book full of intrigue. There you go. It really was such a cute and cozy read, and a hello K moment. So the summary for The Bamboo Baby That Came from the Heavens is Shenju had just been named Shenxing Qiu. He had just watched the only person who cared about him, who had taught him and guided him, ascend up to the heavens. With the rumors circulating about him, he couldn't allow himself to hope that he would accomplish what he will accomplish a good life like the one his teacher wanted for him. That he would accomplish a good life like the one his teacher wanted for him. The last chance he had at a family that wouldn't abandon him, left for a better life in the heavens. That's what he thought until he saw a shooting star aimed right towards the bamboo forest on his peak. It's a really sweet story. For the MDZS fic recommendation, I picked Bound by Fate and Mistakes by Ira Lynn. It's another lighthearted kind of enjoyable read, though it's a first in the series that fate sometimes works in mysterious ways. Along with the story, I highly recommend the second in the series, Gossip is Forbidden in Cloud Recesses. It's pretty funny. It's a riot. So for the first story, here's the summary. In which Sushi is not happy that he had to be saved from drowning by Lan Wangji and Wei Wuxian. He absolutely could have saved himself. They clearly just wanted to show off. Well, he had an idea of how to make them pay. Since it came from a Lan spell, it would surely not backfire in any way. Yeah. No, that was my mistake with Erha. I read Erha when it was fan translation, and it got very confusing. I mean, it's already a complicated story, but that ending, I'm definitely rereading the series once it's done being published because I'm not actually sure how it ended. Just it got a little twisty in the middle, and it was very confusing. But no, I'm glad you all enjoyed it because I definitely did too. And I'm also very much looking forward to our next series, Thousand Autumns. I know some people have some feelings about it, and there are definitely some very gritty moments in it, but I really enjoy the series as well. Yes. I also feel like I'm pretty lucky that I've been in Danmei for a little bit, and now it feels like I'm eating good with how much Danmei is coming up. Oh, yeah. No, you don't read Erha in one shot. You gotta portion it. Yes. It'll be Thousand Autumns, then Peerless. I like that it's in the same universe, so it's got that connection. So yes, it'll be Thousand Autumns, then Peerless. Good question, Esper Lady. But yeah, that will be Tuesday, and I will have, yeah. I don't blame you, Annika. They're pretty intense. Yeah, no worries. We will probably be working through those for a good few months because this series had 4, and Thousand Autumn is, I think. Oh, okay. It's also 4, so I think this was a couple months, like 3.5 months. So we'll probably be working through this for the first couple months. Thousand Autumns and Peerless for the first couple months of the new year. And then we shall pick something new. Of course. And I also hope I have a great con. You will definitely see what I get. Yes. And yes, Thousand Autumns is chunky. I split it up, the first book up, and I have the first one like preset already. I might change the length a little bit, but so far I'm hoping kind of going to be around the same. Like the first stream is going to be a little longer because they have a historical like preface in the back of the book, so kind of you get a little context about the era, and that's recommended you read it first so you understand some of the terms and stuff. But yeah, and I get it. K moment. It's not for everybody. There Yan Wuxi is definitely an asshole. Like he's a very charismatic asshole, but like he's kind of a dick. Like I don't blame you for like not necessarily being super into it, especially like going off of this sweet beautiful couple. But I can't help but like him. Like he is unapologetically an ass and he just embraces it, and I kind of love that for him. Um oh, I have not read Astrolabe Rebirth. But I have it. But yeah. I don't know quite why I like Thousand Autumn so much. I think probably because like the dynamic between Yoshi and our boy Shen Cho. But we'll see. It's been a while. I'm looking forward to rereading it. It Shen Xiao. There we go. Thank you, Esper Lady. I was like, wait. There's so many Shens. The Shen universe has expanded. Thank you. Shen Xiao. But yeah, it'll be a good time. The historical notes are really interesting. Actually, speaking of that, and a book series that's on my to read list, I literally got this because I was interested in the historical context. I believe it's the Song period, but I did end up buying all 3 of To Rule in a Turbulent World. So I've got book 1, book 2, and book 3. I mean, hey, possible series. Possible series for the future. But that'll be a while. We're good for a bit. Right? Although I was unprepared for the random mentions of cannibalism. Yeah. They are so pretty. I don't know if they have illustrations. I hope they do, but I know like with Golden Terrace, we did not really get illustrations. Nope. we are not graced with illustrations for this. Possibly the new published ones. I know I think they've got hardcover ones coming out. Those probably have pictures. But for once I actually was like, you know what? I'm more interested in just reading it this time. It's pretty enough as it is. Like, let's be real. That's okay. But yeah, that's kind of what our future looks like. I will probably end up posting a cosplay picture or two on the community page. I still am not able to see if you guys have posted anything. I don't know why. Oh, nice. I actually did order the little mushroom one because that was the first one I did on this channel. So I was like, all right. Yeah, take my money. Yeah. But we'll see. Nice. No, yeah, I want a live action of so many of these. It would be interesting to see a uncensored version of Golden Terrace. I really enjoyed Golden Terrace. I'm glad that it's getting a lot more recognition. I mean, it's a little bit chunky, but I love the relationship. It's my 3 o'clock sleep paralysis demon thought. That pufferfish. It's one of those questions I never want to know why we eat pufferfish. But I'm so happy that it stuck with you, Truffle, because that's my fun theories. I mean, Esper Lady, we also have it on the channel. I did the whole read through of Golden Terrace if you want to. You totally are free to just read it, but it's also there. And then you will discover what the pufferfish comment is about. But yes, definitely total ride or dies. But in any case, I think that about ties it up. Thank you so much, everyone, for sticking with me as we read through The Disabled Tyrant and His Beloved Pet Fish. I hope you had as wonderful a time as I did. And for those of you watching later, I hope you enjoyed too, and that you'll come by and join us for the next series. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Goodbye.